3, 2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
This is episode 811. I'm your host, Dan Clemente, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is May 31st, last day of May of 2017. We are hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control and he does love you. And I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the partially sunny central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. Broadcasting before the great John Wayne desk. What a show I got set up for you guys folks. And today, folks, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the Constitution and our Bill of Rights and how they are coming under attack. And there's some interesting things that happened yesterday in the Texas Senate. I thought it was hilarious myself, and it's a good teaching moment for us here at the Dan Clement Show. And you're gonna, I don't know if you'll be surprised about it or not. I know some folks that are pro-democracy are going to be ticked at my analysis, but you know that's okay. That's on them, not me. I think I'm doing a truthful, accurate analysis on these events. I also have, it was shared with me by indivisible groups and by Common Cause, and Common Cause is a George Soros supported group. A House Representative Bill 356 on Protecting Our Democracy Act. Again, last time I checked, we are a republic, not a democracy, and this also ties in with what happened down in the Texas House of Representatives yesterday. And like I said, we're going to get into that. I'm also planning on, I have the notes already set up for it after the show. I'm going to record a few more videos to post in my on YouTube in my Exemplar Intentus vlog, and also over at VidMe. I have a VidMe channel that I've been ramping up. I also got to get caught back up on my Patreon channel. There's a lot of things. I wear a lot of hats, and not just a different hat every day. I wear a lot of hats. You know, I'm the producer, the on-air talent, as it were. I'm also the video editor, the recorder, researcher. I do everything here. Dave, one of my friends from back in the Navy, he is a show monitor, and I have Nick is another show monitor when he has the time, and he normally monitors my Facebook feed. And hopefully you'll notice if you visited me on Facebook or gotten the any updates from me, my Facebook page, the show page, no longer has my lovely mug there. It actually has the logo that I got. And it is the Dan Clement Show in red, white, and blue with a mic behind it. I love it. We're going to be doing more of these in the future for different things. But for right now, that's the logo for the show now. I'm going to be able to put that on T-shirts I'm going to try to get it put on a hat. I'm not sure how it's going to look on a hat. We may have to redo it for a hat or clothing. I think it'll look great on a mug, whether it be a black mug or a white mug. So look for those offerings here in the near future. I use a service called Cafe Press that I'm going to reopen. I had a store years ago. I'm going to reopen a store on that and put the links up and have a page on the danclemenshow.com where you can also find the show notes. So we're going to be talking about democracy in America. We're going to talk a little bit about Kathy Griffin, who, in my mind, is what she did was deplorable, and this goes to speak to her character. It does. It does. It goes to speak to her character, and I have an article here from FoxNews.com talking about Kathy Griffin's photo shoot with bloody Trump mask. Not first time celebs have joked about harming the president. I was reading through the article and I was surprised to see Mickey Rourke was threatening to beat President Trump, then candidate Trump, with a baseball bat. You know, and he didn't like Melania. And, you know, okay, you don't like these people, but as a celebrity, do you think that's the wisest thing to do, to tick off over half the country with your anti-Trump rants? That you're going to beat him up, or you're going to do this or that to him, or cut his, you know, have a mask with blood on it and pretend it's Donald Trump or Snoop Dogg having President Trump, you know, in a clown face and, you know, going to shoot him with a gun when he just came out, like, before this video talking about against guns and guns violence and that. The hypocrisy abounds, folks. And then in the news, the Pentagon successfully tested intercontinental ballistic missile. And then I want to talk a little bit more, you know, about the Constitution or Bill of Rights. One thing, you know, the spending, federal spending, all spending is supposed to originate in the House of Representatives. And it's this, I first remember hearing this, in my mind, seriously. I know it probably happened during the Reagan presidency, but I wasn't so politically minded back then. But I remember this idea that there's a certain baseline budgeting. You know, let's say, and we're going to talk about Medicare real quick, and I just want to get this out before I get into this article here since I mentioned it. Let's say you're going to spend $20 billion on Medicare. And in the increase, now we're talking about a 10-year budget, which I think is ridiculous. We need to have yearly budgets to get this thing under control instead of having these 10-year projected budgets. But this budget that President Trump has put forth is a 10-year plan. But let's get back to baseline budgeting in that. You got $20 billion that's in last year's budget. Next year you want to increase that by, let's say, $5 billion. What President Trump's talking about is maybe only increasing the $20 billion, which he's not cutting into. He's only reducing the amount that's going to be spent next year by, let's say, $2.5 billion. So he's going to put it at $22.5 billion. Well, the lamestream media and progressives and anti-freedom folks out there are just going around like chickens with their head cut off. Oh, he's cutting $2.5 billion from Medicare. People are going to die. And that's just not the truth. That's an emotional argument that people are putting forth. And Indivisible Group and Common Cause are putting out these videos with this mother and special needs daughter and tugging at people's heartstrings. And, you know, I made a comment, how dare you? How dare you do this? You know, exploit this mother and the daughter. And this mother was going along with it. So, my thing to her was, how dare you even exploit your daughter for political gains? It's not a cut. People are not, you know, if you survived on $20 billion last year with your Medicaid, and they're not cutting into that, then you're going to have the same amount this year, this fiscal year, as you did last year. So it's not being cut. And folks, this is an argument that's been going on for a long time, that the anti-freedom and progressives out there who love government, who love to rob people of their tax dollars to spend on other things, it's an age-old argument that was been debunked and been debunked, but these people still keep bringing it up because it takes time for us to continue to debunk it. And so I'll be talking about that. Governor Wolf is talking about redefining sex in Pennsylvania. We're going to talk about that. Ted Wheeler seeks to cancel Portland free speech rally. He is the mayor of Portland. We're going to talk about that. And then a Pennsylvania Republican, of all people, is pushing a ban on private gun sales in Pennsylvania. So our Constitution is being, the United States Constitution is being pummeled about. And then our state constitutions are being pummeled about. So we're going to talk about, a lot of things today on the show. But first, Rocky Mountain High Brands is the official drink of the Dan Clement Show. They have black tea, and they have mango energy. They have a berry energy, a coconut lime low-calorie energy drink. They also have lemonade. They have energy shots, bars. They have a Eagle Water, I think it's called. All sorts of brands. They've hired another person on the team at Rocky Mountain High Brands, and it seems to be, yesterday they had a real good day in the stock markets. Of course, in penny stocks, let me real quick here on penny stocks, because I am, full disclosure, I do have stock in Rocky Mountain High Brands, and it is considered a penny stock. We've seen a 3 to 4 cent increase over the past couple weeks in the stock. And I knew as soon as it got up to 10, 11 cents, at least by 11 cents, there was going to be a lot of people selling off their shares. Now you're saying, well, you're only talking 3 or 4 cents, okay, that it might come down with all this sales. Yeah, but you're talking about folks that have, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not. I've seen reports of people having like $1 million worth of this stock and if you have $1 million of penny stock at 11 cents a share and you sell that, and enough people do that, it'll reduce the price down. You've made a hefty profit. You buy low again and wait till it goes up and do the whole thing over again. So penny stocks are very volatile that way. But I think Rocky Mountain High Brands is a very solid company. They're doing a lot of good, solid moves. Up around Kingston, New York, and the Catskills, they've bought an old resort and they're converting the whole thing. It's got a natural spring on the property. They're converting an old spring, natural spring up there, not converting it, but tapping into it. And they're going to start bottling up there. They're getting warehousing set up. It's either going to be completed by the end of this year or early next year. But that's a sign of growth for the company. So. A lot of good things with that, and I made them. They, like I said, they don't sponsor the show. I just made that Rocky Mountain High Brands the official drink. And thank you, Paul. Paul's on the chat room at YouTube, and if you're listening on Blog Talk Radio, I do have the chat room up on Blog Talk Radio, but I'm not monitoring it on my main screen on the production computer. I just have the YouTube live chat up because it takes a lot less resources in the computer. So I did put a new logo up, and Paul says he likes it, so I appreciate that. That was actually professionally done over at Fiverr. It only cost, I think it was $30, and I've got 2 different sets, and I can actually go back and he can help me do a couple other things with that. So we're still messing around with the logo and doing some other things, superimposing it on some stuff, making letterhead stationery, as it were, for my email and also for just regular typed correspondence. So like I said, we're slowly getting there. We're slowly growing the program to where it's looking more and more professional, and that we can continue to grow things. I am trying to talk real quick here before we get to daily Bible reading. I have a young man who lives a couple doors down, a good friend of ours that goes to church with us at the Susquehanna Valley Church of Christ. He doesn't work. And he has I'm not going to get into his medical condition, but he has a medical condition that prevents him from getting a driver's license, so he can't go out and find gainful employment. But I've been trying to get him to come over here and check out my setup here, and then possibly have him help me produce the show while the show's going. Not actually set up the show, but actually come over and help me do the video and do the transitions and stuff like that, and possibly in the near future, when things get going better, be able to compensate him while he helps me do the manual labor for producing the show on the computers. So, but he hasn't come over yet. I've invited him over, invited our IT guy from church to come out. Our congregation wants to live stream the sermons and stuff and special events like the one we're having coming up this weekend with Wissam. He's Arab from Iraq. He grew up Muslim, but he converted to Christianity, and he's a New Testament Christian, working here in the States to work with Muslims and converting them and having great success with that. But anyway, I'm inviting them over. I want them to come over and check out what I have set up. Maybe they can give me some more ideas on how to make it better here. But I think we're doing fairly well on the production, on getting the live stream out to YouTube, and also continuing to broadcast over Blog Talk Radio. I'm still getting a lot of listeners over there. We're just coming off the, and this happens. We're coming off holiday weekend, and my listenership at Blog Talk Radio is down a little bit because a 3-day weekend, people are trying to get caught up at work. A lot of things happen, and a lot of things need to be caught up at work so they can get back up on production schedules or whatever they're doing it at. So today's daily Bible reading comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. This is New King James Version, and this is just a disclaimer. I like the New American Standard Bible because I think it's one of the most accurate modern day translations, at least pre-1976 version, which I have on my bookshelf and I used to use, but our congregation decided years ago to switch over to the New King James Version, and since in the past, and hopefully in the future, if we can get this fibromyalgia under control, I'll get back to doing some teaching and preaching, and I just found it easier to start using and studying in the New King James Version because that's what the Pew Bibles are, and that's what the vast majority of the members that are local congregation use. So all these verses, when I read Bible verses, they're always out of the New King James Version. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. I wanted to go back there to verse 6, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. And folks, if we're not being truthful with each other, and if the news and correspondence we get from the internet or from personal correspondence and that isn't the truth about things, then we can't have relationships. You know, relationships are going to fall apart because relationships cannot be built on lies. Because people, I don't care who you are, people do not like to be lied to. And you can bet your bottom dollar, as prolific a liar as Hillary Clinton has proven to be, I bet you she gets really infuriated when people lie to her. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm surmising that because I know people, you know, in my past that I've had association with outside of the church that were prolific liars, but boy oh howdy, if they got lied to, it was the end of the world, and they never recognized the hypocrisy in that. The quote meal today comes from Emerson. All I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen. I like that. I like that. Short Bible lesson today comes from answersingenesis.org. Can the church embrace homosexual behavior in the name of love? And this is by Avery Foley, and this was posted on March 29th, this past Monday. That's a good question. It's a good article. You'll find the link to that over at the danclemenshow.com. And it's a thought-provoking article, and it's countercultural. It goes against what the culture of today thinks about homosexuality. So that's just a little forewarning there, but it needs to be put out there. All right. Some of what I'm going to talk about today on the show, I'm actually going to do videos on and post up in Exemplar Intentus vlog on YouTube, and also over at my VidMe site. And if you want to know where they're at, you can go down the bottom of the show notes page, or if you're on YouTube after the show, when I get everything edited up and all the information put in, there'll be the links below my YouTube video for today's episode. It'll take you over to VidMe. Now, VidMe, real quick, VidMe is an alternative to YouTube. If you're not following YouTube, if you're not a YouTuber that actually is a creator that produces on YouTube, Some social justice tyrants out there started complaining to YouTube that these sites that spew hate speech, and we're going to talk about this with the Portland mayor, spew this hate speech out there, that these advertisers may not want to be involved with this, right? And so advertisers just in bulk started just pulling back, oh my word, these social justice warriors, the social justice tyrants as I call them, oh, they pointed all this out. We don't want to be associated with that. And to my knowledge, the advertisers never really went and checked out the videos. They just relied on the social justice tyrants out there that told them that like my show, we'll take my show for example, is full of hate speech. And the only reason why they would call what I say is hate speech is because I don't agree with them politically. I don't agree with social justice tyrants and their political views, and I point that out. It's just like the video, and I encourage you to go look at that on YouTube. And VidMe is the thumbnail on it's Reparations Now. And the title of the video is Reparations Do, Irish Welsh folks have to pay these reparations. Because there were some tragic things that were happening to Irish folks too in the 1600s with England. They were actually being shipped over here in droves as slaves. So I'm not equating that to the level of black slavery in America, but there was more than just one skin color of slaves that were imported to the United States. But as an Irishman, I don't dwell on it. We're the colonies whooped Britain. We set up a country, pretty much thumb on our nose at them in Europe because of the structure of this republic, this grand great republic. And honestly, I don't think Brits have really gotten over this. I don't. Trust me, I was stationed over there for 2 years in Scotland, and England still hasn't gotten over us kicking their butts twice. Revolutionary War and the War of 1812. We whooped them twice. But anyway, so that's what's going on with YouTube. So the VidMe is an answer to YouTube. They still have community standards, but they don't have sponsors. You get tips over there. People can give monthly donations to your channel over at VidMe, and it has nothing to do with the advertisers. You bring your own advertisers over, and everything any advertisers you have on the show or that supports your show is yours totally. Now they do. I think VidMe in the future is going to be doing some type of commercial stuff, but their standards, they're not a corporation like YouTube, and I think their standards are going to be different, and hopefully they take it on a case-by-case basis instead of just listening to a bunch of social justice tyrants out there saying the sky's falling and we're going to boycott you if you keep, all this hate speech you keep advertising. So, but I think the pendulum's going to swing because I don't think YouTube can sustain the model it's on now. I really don't. I think they're from all indications they're bleeding money, and they need the creators that made them who they are. Guys and gals like me. And I've come to the show a little bit late, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere on YouTube as long as they allow me to broadcast. So, but my videos are over at VidMe and also on YouTube. My short videos, my long videos, I don't have enough of a following over at VidMe yet. I need at least 50 people following my channel before I'm allowed to upload my full episodes over there, which I plan to do in the future. And same way over at Patreon, I'm loading up these. Actually, they're just links to the YouTube videos, and that's okay with the description and everything in it. So, all right, this is funny, and I am going to be doing a video later on today, but this is after reporting protesters to ICE, Texas lawmaker threatens to shoot colleague. Now, ICE, this was an empty threat by the Republican. ICE never received a phone call, but this is a teachable moment here on the Dan Clements Show. And here's why it's a teachable moment. Remember last week and for weeks now, I've been saying that the anti-freedom progressives out there, the social justice tyrants, groups like Indivisible and Let America Vote and Common Cause, these type of groups, everything they do is emotional. How they stir people up is by emotions. And this actually carries into their status quo, their modus operandi, their standard operating procedure in the Democrat Party, because the Democrat Party's been doing this for years, has been working on people's emotions. So what happens when you get a very charged House of Representatives in Texas? They're talking about SB 4. As far as SB 4 is about sanctuary cities. There were, I seen on One American News Network, they actually had video, which it's hard. That One American News Network does not put out all the video of their shows, and hopefully in the future, and this is one of the things we want to do when we grow the show, when we watch things like One American News Network, we actually want to record like the news hour, and then go back through, have someone sitting there ready as a video editor and go back through and get the clips out that we want of these things. And the same way, no matter what news service we might be using, it could be Fox News, it could be one of the major networks, the lamestream media networks like ABC, NBC, CBS. So this is one thing that we want to do that I don't have time to do in my busy schedule throughout the day, but I'd like to be able to do. But I did see this on One American News Network where there were some people had signs up talking about I'm illegal, I'm here to stay. They were inside the rotunda at the Texas State House in Austin claiming that they're illegal, and they do not, under Texas or the United States Constitution, have the right to be there to protest or redress grievances with their government because they're illegal. The United States of America, the federal government or the state, wherever they're at, and this one happens to be Texas, they don't have a constitutional right to redress grievances with their government because that is not their government. They're here illegally. And that's one of the many problems with illegal aliens. Undocumented, they're not undocumented Americans, they're undocumented illegal aliens. And that's one of the many problems. And so if somebody called ICE on these protesters, I think they'd have a right to do that. But come to find out that this Matt Rinaldi just made this empty threat. Well, even though he made this empty threat, Mr. Representative Alfonso Pancho Nevarez threatened Rinaldi, was going to shoot him. Now, a lot of this is he said, she said. There's statements up. So I'm going to put a video up later today with a couple of things I found. And it's a he said, she said type thing because we don't have this. I think they were both smart enough not to put it out on a video. However, there is, and I'm trying to find it, and hopefully I will find it before I do my vlog this afternoon. There is a conference or a press conference where Mr. Navarro is really mad still and making some very condemning statements that actually I think goes to prove that he started the ruckus, even though Representative Rinaldi made this empty threat about calling ICE. This Representative Navarro came over, started shoving and pushing him, and then some other guys got in and pushed them apart. So we have this going on down in Texas, okay? And like I said, all these links are going to be up on the danclementshow.com show page. The one thing I want to point out here that I thought was, and this I think is more of the, let me see if I can find it here. Here it is. I think this is where the teachable moment is. Liberal CNN anchor calls assault of GOP representative on Texas House floor democracy in action. And when I seen that on Facebook, whoever shared it with me on Facebook, and I went over and started researching this, I made a comment when I did share the whole thing on Facebook, was, yeah, you're right, this is democracy in action. This is actually how democracy or mob rules actually, this is what it actually looks like when everything's emotional. And do we want this? Do we want democracy in America? Because that's exactly what was happening on the House floor at the Texas Capitol. This was democracy in action. This was mob rule. Representative Navarez took it upon himself to go and start, and there's clear video evidence of this where he came over to Matt Rinaldi and started pushing him. And this is what happens in a democracy. Because if you don't get your way, then you threaten violence. And if that doesn't work, then you actually commit the violence. And if that doesn't work, you just keep escalating it. There's no end of it. When it comes to mob rule, the mob wants to win. So, and this is what the founding fathers were. This is why they were against democracy. This was their biggest fears about democracy, because the mob will not stop until it wins. And this is exactly how the Democrat Party has been operating for years. If you look back with that idea in mind about mob rule, if you look back over recent history, and let's go back to the Jimmy Carter presidency, although it wasn't so bad back then, in my opinion. I could be wrong here. But with that in mind, if you look back over, especially this last administration and also the Clinton administration, Hillary Clinton tried to do the same thing, tried to whip up the frenzy of the mob. We see the Black Lives Matter movement. That is what they do when they go to protest. The Antifa, the anti-fascists, which that's hilarious to me, because they're saying they're fighting fascists, but they're using fascist tactics to fight fascism, which there really isn't any fascism in America to the extent that they're saying it. I'm not saying fascists don't exist, but what they're calling fascism in the United States of America just is not fascism. I'm sorry. So we have this whole mob mentality here, and I think this liberal anchor hits it right on the head. This is democracy in action. This is, if you watch the video, this is exactly how a democracy acts. You know, they start getting in people's faces because everything's emotional with one side or the other or both. And they get very passionate. And then tempers flare and things are done and said that really in a civilized society wouldn't happen. And this is why the founding fathers set up a republic, not a democracy. But even in a republic, and this isn't the first time, if you go back and do some research pre-Civil War, there was a caning incidents where a Democrat senator almost beat to death a Republican representative, or a Whig representative at the time, and almost beat him to death and injured him for life, actually. And this was in the Senate, on the floor of the Senate in the United States of America. So you tell me, was that behavior in the Texas State House, on the floor of the House in Texas, in Austin, Texas, was that acting like a republic where the representatives actually sit down and coolly debate things? Now, I'm not saying it was right for Matt Rinaldi to say what he said about the ICE agents, even though he didn't do it, because, you know, this morning, if you watch the news this morning down there, the ICE agency doesn't have a record of that phone call. So it was an empty threat. But what happens when you're dealing with emotions and when you're working on emotions on an emotional level all the time, you see that as a threat. And because you're working on emotions, you react to it just like that instead of calling him out on it. Yeah, you know, instead of saying, yeah, Rinaldi, give us the proof that you called the ICE agents. You know, we're going to take a couple, you know, ask the Speaker of the House there in Texas, you know, we want a short recess to investigate, make some phone calls to see if he did call the ICE agents. None of that happened as far as I know. None of that happened. And so we have the situation we had down in the Texas House of Representatives. And to me, it was a teachable moment, and it was also, to me, it was laughable. A lot of people are like, well, there's nothing to laugh about. Well, sure it is. If you can't find humor in that, where the progressives and anti-freedom crowds are always calling the United States of America a democracy, and then you see democracy in action like that, and you don't find the irony in that, and get down on your knees and thank God that we're not a democracy, that we're actually a representative republic, then I don't know what to say, because I thought it was pretty fun. and it's a never-ending struggle. And this next article goes right just hand in hand with this. It's a summary of, and this was posted by an indivisible group. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's a summary of H.R. 356, Protecting Our Democracy Act. And I made the comments. I said, when are you people going to realize that we are not a democracy? No matter how many times you want to call us a democracy, we're not a democracy. We're a representative republic. If you want a democracy, go to another country. We are not a democracy. And they'll try to argue that point to no effect with me anyway, because I know better. I know that we're a republic. That's what we're set up as. And this is, to me, this is a good illustration of the difference between a democracy and a republic. In a democracy, you have two wolves and a sheep. And the wolves have guns, and the sheep doesn't, and the wolves are voting on what they're going to have for lunch. That's a democracy. In a democracy, 51% of the people could say, well, we don't want anybody to have guns. And so in a pure democracy, just because 51% of the people say that and vote that way, then your guns get taken away. This happens in parliamentary countries. This happens in cities, where a lot of cities have, and we have a little d democracy inside the republic. We have, our representatives vote on things, and they can be simple majorities, they can be super majorities, whatever their rules are they set up for the House or the Senate. So there is some democratic procedures within inside the republic. There's voting going on, but the difference between those two wolves and the sheep in a republic is that the wolves may be armed, but in a republic, the sheep is armed also. And in a republic protects the minorities from the majority. You see what I'm saying? And we have a constitution that dictates to the governments, whether your state government or the federal government, dictates to the government the enumerated powers that the people deemed necessary for you to have. And that's all you're supposed to have. And the biggest problem on the federal government side of it is, and in some states, but in the federal government, they are governing over things they have no constitutional authority or power to do so. So for folks to go around, social justice tyrants and the anti-freedom crowd out there to go around, they're going to take away our schools, they're cutting funding to the education department or to the EPA, oh, we're going to die. That type of emotional response. And then when you call them on it, please show me in the Constitution, the United States Constitution, where the federal government is supposed to be governing over schools or the EPA or anything else you want that's not enumerated in the Constitution. And quite frankly, folks, they will not answer me on this. These folks out there will not answer me on this because they know they're in the wrong. What answer can they give me? They can't point to an enumerated power for the federal government to be doing anything with a Department of Education or having anything to do with their schools. It's a state power that the people gave to the state only. The same way with the EPA. That's a state power that the people gave to the states only. Federal government has no business having a Department of EPA. And folks, this is where we go astray, as it were, when it comes to our constitutional republic, whether it's at the state level, the federal level. Too many people have an emotional response to a political situation, and because they have an emotional response to a political situation, the wrong things usually happen. Now, this Protecting Our Democracy Act, it should be Protecting Our Republic Act, and if it goes too much further, I'm going to email my representative, Lou Barletta, to ask for a name change on it because we are not a democracy. I mean, it's simple facts there. Calls are mounting for an independent commission to investigate ties between Donald Trump, his campaign, and Russian government. A bill from House Democrats is now beginning to attract a modicum of Republican support, with potentially more to sign on soon. Now, this is from a website called GovTracks. We talked about this before. You can go on and look at the bills and the summaries. The context: earlier this month, President Donald Trump fired Director James Comey after Comey reportedly requested increased funding for his bureau's Russian probe, which we found out that never happened. That was debunked. Then Trump revealed highly classified information provided to America by our ally Israel and shared it with the Russian government, which many consider to be a geopolitical foe. And a lot of people think Russia's our foe. This comes on top of confirmed Russian hacking and releasing files from the Democrat National Committee, but not their Republican counterparts. Attorney Jeff Sessions lying about meetings with the Russian ambassador and National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's firing after misleading vice president about contacts with Russia. What the bill does. The Protecting Our Democracy Act, H.R. 356, would establish an independent commission to investigate the Trump campaign and administration ties to the Russian government. There would be 12 members who cannot currently serve at any level of government, 6 chosen by Republican leaders and 6 chosen by Democrat leaders, ensuring an even bipartisan mix. They would have the power to issue subpoenas and would be required to produce a final report within 18 months. And I said this on the show a couple weeks ago, be careful what you wish for. They got their special prosecutor. But if you look at the history of special prosecutors, they are slow, it's cumbersome. I don't think they can get this job done in 18 months. And even if they could, I still say be careful what you wish for, because it may come out that Trump is totally innocent of all the fabricated and fake news and charges that are being drummed up against him. And it may point more to not Russian hacking, but DNC hacking and the deep state trying to make it look like Russia was hacking. And I'm just, be careful what you wish for, folks. It's just that simple. So we have this this bill that's starting, that Democrats have been putting up, and George Soros-supported groups are pushing this. Well, Protect Our Democracy Act. Again, we're not a democracy or a republic. Do you want, and this is representative of a democracy, do you want what happened down in the Texas House of Representatives in Austin to be the norm all across the country? Because that's what a democracy does. That's exactly what a democracy does. Okay, a couple things. I know I talked about this a little bit here. I'm not going to get too much into the Kathy Griffin photo shoot. It was, what were you thinking, Kathy? Evidently she wasn't. And she's since pulled back. Oh, I'm sorry. But the problem is, the damage is already done. The video's out there, and it's being saved by a lot of people. And it's not, that genie's not going to be put back in the jar. When you say words, like Madonna at the quote-unquote Women's March in Washington, D.C. I'd like to blow up the White House. The Secret Service should have been dragging her off the stage. Because that's a direct threat to the President of the United States. And if you read this article from FoxNews.com, they have a list. The one on the bottom, the last one I saw on there was Mickey Rourke. And I'm like, I didn't know that he threatened to beat the president with a baseball bat and doesn't like Milana. I'm like, I've watched her on this foreign trip and her speeches and stuff like that. I said, what's not to like about Milana? Honestly, what's not to like about her? She's very intelligent, well-spoken, easy on the eyes. I know that's not a requirement for a first lady, but it's one of her attributes. She's very friendly with folks, seems like a very caring individual, and I don't know, got me why they would do that. All right. The Pentagon, if you didn't already know the news, successfully tested an intercontinental ballistic missile defense system for the first time. And I believe they sent that off from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. The article was by Philip Stewart and Lucy Nicholson over to HuffingtonPost.com. Just to let you guys know that I do use part of the lamestream media for my reporting. Because I think they have a pretty decent article. It's a Reuters article, but they're sharing a Reuters article here. U.S. military on Tuesday cheered a successful first ever missile defense test involving a simulated attack by an intercontinental ballistic missile and a major milestone for a program meant to defend against a mounting North Korean threat. The U.S. military fired an ICBM-type missile from the the Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands. I'll just say they fired it from the Marshall Islands toward the waters just south of Alaska. It then fired a missile to intercept it from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. Experts compared the job to hitting a bullet with another bullet and noted the complexity is magnified by enormous distance involved. The Missile Defense Agency said it was the first live fire test against a simulated ICBM for the ground-based mid-course defense managed by Boeing, and hailed as an incredible accomplishment. Now, in the past, if you have been following from the Reagan era on, in the past, these missiles were fired from different places, and they were fired pretty much at a stationary target. And sometimes they missed and sometimes they hit, and they were trying to fine-tune everything. This is the first time, as far as I'm able to ascertain, that they had a missile that took down another active missile that was in flight, like a bullet trying to hit a bullet. Okay, honestly, I think they need to do a couple more of these and make sure little Kim over in North Korea is watching, and letting him know that, you know, you can threaten us all you want, but we're just going to swat these missiles down. And I think this is, in my mind, part of defending the United States of America. We don't need a foreign missile base to defend the United States of America. We can do it quite literally from our own shores. Vandenberg Air Force Base in California is on the continent of the United States, last time I checked. And I'm of the opinion we have way too many bases throughout the world. I really do. I think some of these countries like NATO, which if you watch the news, I don't have this in my show notes page, but you watch the news past couple days, NATO's coming to realize that maybe they should start taking up some of their own defenses and not relying on the United States of America so much. You know, and I think that's a good thing. I think countries should defend themselves, you know, and take up their own defense and not rely on the tax dollars of another country to defend themselves. And I think I'm with Ron Paul on this. I think we could do a fantastic job defending the United States and helping allies when the need is the actual national security need of us. Not everything we do in the world is national security or rises to, you know, this affects our national security. It just doesn't. You know, they say it does, and just saying something does, just like the anti-freedom crowd out there saying we're a democracy, doesn't make it so. So we have to be careful with that. A couple more things here. Governor Wolf, he's the governor of Pennsylvania. His approval rating is down less than 35%. So he's not well liked. I don't think he was ever really well liked from the time he became governor to today. And one of the reasons that he is losing in the polls of Pennsylvania, for all of its faults, with all the anti-freedom crowd of liberals and progressives in the state, it's still a pretty conservative state, you know, if you get outside of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And what they're trying to do now, what Governor Wolf is trying to do now, is redefine sexuality here in Pennsylvania, instead of just being two genders. And I've been saying this for a long time. On this show, we only recognize two genders. That's male, female. That's it. You have a problem with that, it's on you, not me. And I don't think, and this is another thing I'm talking about here, when constitutions are under direct threat. I'm going to go back and check it again, but I don't remember when I read through the Pennsylvania state constitution, I don't remember them saying that the state has the power, the authority to define what gender is. I could be wrong. I'm going to do another search after the show. I have a searchable Pennsylvania Constitution. You can just look that up on Google and find that it's a PDF that you can actually search, or you can actually do the search online. But here again, we're talking about law versus man. And I don't remember reading anything in the Pennsylvania Constitution that gives the governor or the legislature any power or authority to govern over what genders are going to be defined in the state of Pennsylvania. And I bet I bet you if you look at New York and these other states that have done this, if you look in their constitutions, I bet you will not find an enumerated power from the people to allow their state governments to govern over something like that. And folks, we are a nation of laws, not men. And when I say that, I'm talking about we are a republic, not a democracy. In a democracy, they rely more on the opinions of men and culture, men and women and culture, to determine what's right or wrong, instead of sitting down with a determined or a defined morality that guides your lawmaking. And again, Governor Wolf, if he pursues this, like some of the other taxes on the natural gas that's being produced out of the Marseille Shale up north and west of us, I think he's just going to be a one-term governor. I mean, the polls are showing that he has just been an abysmal governor when it comes to creating jobs. He's actually cost the Commonwealth more jobs than he's created. I think the only good thing that's happened under his administration, and I really don't think it had a lot to do with him. It happened to have a lot to do with the Department of Transportation here in PA, is getting the Selinsgrove bypass, Central Susquehanna Valley bypass done, and they're doing a lot. They're getting a lot of stuff done. They're building the bridge across the Susquehanna, the west branch of the Susquehanna. They're getting the connector roads done. They're doing road grades. The whole planning thing, and it's out of the planning stage. It's actually in the physical construction stage now. But that was, I think that was just due to the Department of Transportation here in Pennsylvania. Now, out in Portland, we have another situation here where the mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, is seeking to suppress American citizens, the American people in Portland, suppress their freedom of speech. It's a direct attack on their First Amendment right. Now, this story is an Associated Press story found in the Washington Times by Martha Bellisle, Bellisle, Bellisle. The mayor of Portland, Oregon on Monday urged U.S. officials and organizers to cancel a Trump free speech rally and other similar events, saying that they are inappropriate and could be dangerous after two men were stabbed to death on a train as they tried to help a pair of young women targeted by an anti-Muslim tirade. Mayor Ted Wheeler said he hopes the victims will inspire changes in the political dialogue in this country. It comes amid a wider debate in the U.S. about the First Amendment, often in liberal cities like Portland and Berkeley, California, and on college campuses where violent protesters between far-right and far-left protesters have derailed appearances by contentious figures. Now, everything I've seen, with Berkeley and Portland and these protests, it's always been instigated by the militant arm of the Democrat Party. Almost every video you see out there, it was instigated by the militant arm of the Democrat Party. It goes on down here. I'm not going to read the whole article. The federal government has issued a permit for a free speech rally Saturday and has yet to give a permit for an event on June 10th. The mayor says his main concern was participants coming to peddle a message of hatred, saying hate speech is not protected by the Constitution. And you hear this drumbeat from the anti-freedom crowd and the progressives in this country. Do tell, Mr. Wheeler, Mayor Wheeler, what constitutes hate speech in your opinion? Now, if you read through the article and if you've watched the videos and the news I've seen, it's any speech he disagrees with that they want to label as hate speech. Telling the truth about something is hate speech. Me telling the truth about Islam to Mr. Wheeler is hate speech. Me telling the truth about, and we're just going to continue to get into these things, me telling the truth about in President Trump's budget that there aren't any cuts in the budget, there are a reduction in the increase in spending. That's not a cut. That's hate speech. That's hate speech because he doesn't agree with it. Anything I've talked about today, me citing the Texas House of Representatives as this is what democracy in action actually looks like. If you want a democracy, that's what you're going to get. That would be considered hate speech because the anti-freedom crowds don't agree with it. And hate speech is very subjective. The term, the definition is very subjective because what you consider hate speech, I may not. And this is the wisdom of the Founding Fathers. They are not leaving it up to state or federal government to determine what is free speech or what is hate speech or what is not. I think they were very wise in doing that because just like when political parties change and their politics and policies change, that affects the economy. And that's why I think there should be, and it affects a lot of other things. It affects foreign policy. It affects the way we deal with other countries, things like that. You know, all these things come into play here. And I think the wisdom of the Founding Fathers was it's not up to the government to determine what free speech is, what hate speech is or isn't. It's up to you and I to determine that. But it's not up to you and I. I don't have a right to stop you from speaking because I think what you're saying is hate speech. If I think what you're saying is hate speech, I will walk away so I don't listen to it. And if I'm a commentator like I am here now, I will have it on my show and comment on it. But I'm not going to stop you from saying what you want to say. You have that right, and I'll literally defend to the death your right to say it. I may not agree with it. I may spend the rest of my life fighting against what you're saying. But in this country, in this republic, you're allowed to say that, and the government can't stop you. As a matter of fact, Ted Wheeler, the federal permits, the reason why there's federal permits is because these rallies are on federal ground that's in the city. And that's a whole other issue about the federal government owning property like that, but I don't want to get too far afield here. You know, this is a direct threat on your right of freedom of speech. And this is a mayor that has no compunctions about seeking to because he doesn't agree with your speech. He calls it hate speech. Like I said, it's very, very subjective here. All right, last thing. And I know I've been pretty passionate today about these things. This is incredible to me. Pennsylvania Republican pushing ban on private gun sales. Santor's bill would bar the private sales of Americans have enjoyed since the Second Amendment was ratified in 1791 and would require that every sale be processed in front of an agent of the government via background check. And this is by A.W.R. Hawkins over at Breitbart.com. This is posted on May 28th of this year. This means that a law-abiding Pennsylvania selling a gun to a fellow hunter, lifelong co-worker, or child friend would have to seek out a federal firearms license holder and the would-be buyer would have to pass a background check, just as Orlando Pulse attacker had a background check. Your Aurora movie theater had a background check. Gabby Giffords attacker did. Fort Hood attacker did. Virginia Tech attacker, all these had background checks, but didn't stop them. And this is an infringement. And the Second Amendment at the federal level actually applies to the states also, even though the states do have gun laws, Second Amendment type laws on the books, they still have to adhere to, this is a God-given right that is protected at the federal level. And if it's protected at the federal level, it's protected at the state level. And I'm like, this guy, he's from Delaware County, that's down Philadelphia, and he may have problems, but folks, you need to go to my article that I'm posting up here, Pennsylvania Republican Push and Ban, and it's a litany of attackers that had background checks, and it didn't stop anything. Background checks only are enriching the federal firearms holders. When you buy a gun, you have to go through a background check to begin with. It's only enriching them. And the state, because they actually have to pay a fee to the state actually to have that. So it's just, again, we have to be careful. We are a representative republic, and we have protected rights at the federal and state level. And when they're being attacked, we need to step back and look and see why they're being attacked and why they're actually, these guys are thinking of what they're doing. I think we can teach ourselves and others once we get down to the roots of the issue. This has been the Dan Clemens Show. I'm the host, Dan Clemens, your constitutional warrior. today, and God bless. We'll see you tomorrow at noon, folks.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.